Alright, welcome back everybody. So we have been using our basil plant and different colors of light to record how fast carbon dioxide is changing as a result of photosynthesis happening or not happening at different rates, right? So we got done collecting our data table, or collecting our data in our data table up here. So we have all our time, our different color of light, and our carbon dioxide concentration in ppm. And now we graphed each of these light colors, and we were able to find this number. It was A. Now I don't want you guys to get too worried about the math involved, but we can look at two things about A. The first thing is it positive or is it negative? So in almost every case, in the both amounts of white light and in the red and blue light, we had a negative A. But when we looked at the green light, there was a positive A right here. So what does that mean? A positive A is going to mean carbon dioxide is increasing. But a negative A is going to mean that carbon dioxide is decreasing. Now we know in photosynthesis, as a recap, we know that carbon dioxide is being used for photosynthesis. So if photosynthesis is happening, then it should decrease. So something's funky about green light. If carbon dioxide is increasing, how much photosynthesis do you think is happening? Is it any? So let's scroll down here and look at a few questions. We're being asked to consider which light produced the greatest rate of photosynthesis. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to compare these values of A, which really reflect how steep my line is, how quickly carbon dioxide was used, in order to figure out which light color caused it to be used the fastest, which would be the most photosynthesis. So I recorded my A values, and it looks like if we just look at the colors where A was negative and photosynthesis was happening, I've got a negative 5.7 for 7 watt light. I've got a negative 8.9 for 8.5 watt white light. And I've got a negative 7 for red and blue light. So it looks like my 8.5 watt white light had the most negative A value, which means the steepest downward line, which means the fastest photosynthesis. So what light produced the greatest rate of photosynthesis? 8.5 watt white light. Click. Hey, look, I did it. All right, which light produced the second greatest rate of photosynthesis? So now I'm comparing my 7 watt white light and negative 5.7 with my red and blue light, negative 7. So this is a steeper downward line, which means faster photosynthesis. So my red and blue light gets second place. Sweet. Now the last question in this first part is, which light produced the slowest rate of photosynthesis? Well, it looks like pretty much no photosynthesis happened when I used green light. And there might have even been something else going on. So there's no such thing as like negative photosynthesis. So I'm going to say that in this green light, we've got pretty much 0. And a hint that something else is happening. You might already know what that is. So I'm going to put green. All right? So when I'm done with that section, I can click lock, answer, and continue. And I can move on to part 2. Now in part 2, we're going to watch a short video, and it's going to tell us a little bit of something about a new type of instrument we can use to get some more information. So I'm not going to record this video, but watch it and then click play on my video once you're finished getting this extra information. Alrighty, I'm back with you now. So the first question that we're supposed to answer, just to make sure we know what's going on in the video, is what is this green liquid that he's putting in this little rectangular vial called a cuvette? What is that stuff? He took some basil leaves, boiled water, and what's in this vial is we've got this isopropanol, it's a chemical, that we're using to extract some of the pigment from the basil leaves. So it's a combination of this chemical and pigments from the basil leaves, which is why it's green. So now it's asking you, like, what is this thing, the spectrometer? What is it measuring? Well, if you look really closely in here, on the y-axis of the top graph, we've got intensity. That doesn't tell us much. But then on the bottom, we've got absorbance. That's what this says. And if we look on the x-axis, we have wavelengths. So if you didn't already know, different colors of light have different wavelengths, which is literally saying that light is like this wave, and some colors of light have big waves, and some colors of light have these little waves. So the length of the wave is specific to the color of light. So we can say, oh, you know, this is my favorite color, guys. This nice teal has about a 500 nanometer wavelength, okay? And that's how I'm going to identify the color of light. I'm just going to say light at 500 nanometers absorbs at this level, at this intensity, okay? So that's how we're looking at this graph. So let's go down. The second question is asking you to kind of summarize what is it that the spectrometer is doing. What kind of information are we trying to get? So take a look at these choices, pause the video, give it a try, see if you're right by clicking submit answer, and then if you get it wrong or if you get it right, you can just click play again on my video and we'll figure that out together. So, all right, how'd you do? So let's look at these options. The correct answer is actually that when you place a cuvette of liquid in the spectrometer, it measures how much light is absorbed at each frequency, right? We had wavelength at the bottom, and wavelength has to do with frequency, so that might have tripped you up, but we've got wavelength at the bottom, and then we've got the intensity, absorbance on the y-axis. We weren't measuring temperature of the liquid. We definitely weren't seeing how fast a plant grows. There's no whole plant in there, right? And we weren't measuring the rate of photosynthesis. We already did that, right? When we measured the rate that carbon dioxide was being consumed. So this first answer is correct. Now it's giving us what's called an absorption spectrum. This is a graph. It's a type of graph that shows us the results of this instrument above. So let's take a look at this. Isn't this a nice graph? So it says, based on the graph, which of these colors of light is most absorbed? So this is pretty intuitive to look at this graph. You know, if we've got a really high data point up here, we've got a lot of absorbance. If it's low, like down here in this green light, it's low absorbance. So what color is most absorbed? I don't know what these are called in fancy terms, but that looks purple to me, right? Well, purple isn't an option. So if I'm choosing between green down here, red about there, and blue, I'm clicking blue. Let's see if I'm right. Nailed it. Okay. So question 4 says, which color of light is most likely to pass through the basal leaf pigments without being absorbed? Now, unfortunately, my graph does not have an axis that plots most likely to pass through the basal leaf plant without being absorbed. Well, what is that actually telling me? The important part is without being absorbed, right? So if it's not being absorbed, it should have a low absorbance. And if I look here at green, that's pretty low. It's pretty low. Don't be tripped up by this little tail on the end. That might be confusing. That's actually where our data taking just stopped. So let's focus on how low this green is compared to that red and that blue. So I'm picking green. I think that the green light is not going to be absorbed. And I'm right. All right, so this last question in this part is, why do the leaves appear green? Well, let's see. Our options are the leaves absorb green light, so the leaves appear green. Well, we just saw that the leaves do not absorb the green light, so that one's not right. The leaves absorb red and blue light, but reflect the green light. Well, it looks like they do absorb red and blue light. Maybe the green light is reflected. Maybe that's what we're looking at. And then the last answer is the leaves create green light. I mean, that'd be really cool. But I'm just going to let you know, leaves do not create green light. As soon as I learn that that's a plant I can buy, I will pass the information along. But it looks like this is probably the best answer, and that ends up being correct. So let's move on to this part 3. So part 3, guys, it's got some really great information, but I'm just going to tell you right now, the graph is a little bit hard to read. So if you have trouble reading the graph, just listen to what I'm sort of helping you read, and hopefully that will be enough information and you can kind of see what I'm seeing. So our graph is plotting 4 different curves here. And what they've tried to do is kind of trace over each curve with a different color to indicate which light source we're talking about. So what they've done is they've measured what frequency or wavelength, right? Basically what light is being produced by each of these colors of light that we observed in our initial experiment. So if I'm looking at this curve that has a pink trace over it, that corresponds to the red and blue light. So it's saying that the red and blue light was emitting light that basically corresponded to red light here, up at around like 650 nanometers, and it also emitted some blue light down here. Now if I look at this green line, the green only emitted light in this sort of green part of the spectrum, around 525 maybe nanometers. So my questions are asking me to use that information to say which light source produces the most green light. Guys, it's going to be a shocker. The green light bulb. And I'm not just saying that now, right? I actually measured this, or my collaborators at Pivot measured this using that sophisticated instrument. So there's that answer. And the second question is, rank the light bulbs in order of the amount of blue light they emit. Most, greatest to least. So what I'm going to look at is the blue part of my spectrum. I'm going to go, which line is on top? That looks like my 8.5 watt white light, then my red and blue, then my 7 watt white light, and then my green. Where did I get those from? I looked up here in my key. So I'm going to find 8.5 watt white light, then red and blue, then 7 watt, then green. Submit. So now the conclusion, this part's for you.